And I've just gone around the corner so that I can hear you, because the loud noise is coming out of the protest that's just taking place outside of number 10 Downing Street. Is pretty deafening, to trying to keep them in a small and tight area, basically in the middle of Whitehall. It's sort of just been pushed a little bit further down from Downing Street, so it's not quite on Keir Starmer's front window, so I'm sure he probably won't be able to see it, but he definitely will be able to hear it.
Massive crowds have stormed Downing Street. Police are overwhelmed, flares burn across Westminster, and the capital is in open revolt. Thousands chant "Starmer Out" as barriers collapse and officers retreat toward the gates of number 10. Reporters shout over sirens, live feeds roll non-stop, and the message is unmistakable: the government is losing control of its own streets. The camera feeds are relentless. From rooftops, drones stream live footage to millions of phones worldwide. On TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube, the same scene repeats: a sea of people pressing against the gates of power. Within minutes, headlines flash across the globe. Crowds storm Downing Street. Government losing control. London has seen protests before, but not like this. This isn't a march. It's a rupture. Outside number 10, the chants intensify. Protesters wave energy bills instead of flags, shaking them in the air like proof of betrayal. "You can't hear words," one man yells into a BBC microphone. "We're paying for failure." The front line of officers braces again, but the push is too strong. Barricades collapse. The human wall gives way. A roar rises from the crowd, not triumph, but release. Inside newsrooms, anchors cut mid-segment to break coverage. On Sky, the camera zooms in as the first protesters breach the outer cordon. "This is extraordinary," the correspondent says, voice unsteady. "The police have lost control of Whitehall." The feed pans across chaos, banners waving, sirens flashing, people climbing streetlights just to see. For the first time in years, Britain's political capital looks ungoverned. 48 hours earlier, it began with one line. Wednesday afternoon, the House of Commons. Keir Starmer stood at the dispatch box defending a policy called the Emergency Energy Surcharge. It was supposed to stabilise public finances. Instead, it detonated them. His tone was firm, almost clinical. "Tough times require tough measures," he said. The benches behind him murmured approval. The opposition benches sat silent. By nightfall, that 7-word soundbite became a symbol of arrogance. Clipped from parliamentary footage, the video spread across social media faster than any government statement in memory. Overlaid captions read, "Tough times for who?" Within 6 hours, it had 10 million views. The reaction was volcanic. Households already crushed by record bills posted screenshots of their gas statements side by side with Starmer's quote. Pensioners filmed themselves reading the line aloud, shaking their heads. Shop owners wrote it on cardboard and taped it to shuttered doors. "Tough times require tough measures" became the most hated phrase in Britain. Opposition MPs pounced. "This isn't leadership," one said on ITV. "It's economic cruelty in a soundbite." Even Labour loyalists grimaced privately. The next morning's front pages were brutal. The Sun, Starmer's cold. Truth, The Mirror, tough on people, soft on power. But Downing Street doubled down. "The Prime Minister stands by his words," a spokesman said. That line hardened the fury. By Thursday, it wasn't just political activists speaking out. It was everyone. Veterans groups, charity boards, and small business coalitions all announced public demonstrations for Saturday. Energy bills, rent spikes, and food inflation had converged into a single crisis, and this time the anger had no political label. In Manchester, trade unions declared solidarity marches. In Glasgow, shopkeepers planned to close early in protest, not profit. In Bristol, a viral post read, "We can't freeze quietly anymore." The momentum was unstoppable. Downing Street staff tried to frame it as a wave of organised misinformation. But there was nothing organised about it. It was spontaneous rage. By Friday evening, police intelligence briefings warned of significant assembly risk in central London. The Home Office urged calm. Starmer, returning from a policy summit, told reporters, "Protest is part of democracy." He didn't realise democracy was about to surround him. Saturday night, London. The first chants began near Parliament Square just before sunset. Enough is enough. Then, we can't afford this. By 8 p.m, those chants had merged into one. Starmer out. The crowd grew by the minute, pouring from side streets and tube exits until the entire stretch of Whitehall was packed. Police formed a double line in front of the iron gates leading to Downing Street. Loudspeakers blared warnings. The crowd answered with jeers. Smoke flares turned the night crimson. Someone climbed onto a lamppost, waving a utility bill like a flag. Cameras zoomed in. The image went viral before the man climbed down. "Officers are attempting to maintain order," the BBC reporter said, but order had already gone. A bottle flew overhead. The first row of protesters pushed forward. Metal barriers screeched as they bent inward. One officer fell, another lost balance, and suddenly the line broke. The crowd surged through. Within seconds, police retreated to regroup near the gates of number 10. Their radios crackled with calls for backup. Units from Westminster Bridge moved to Downing Street immediately. But reinforcements were too far. The flood couldn't be stopped. Protesters reached the final cordon, waving papers in the air, unpaid bills, eviction notices, letters marked "Final Warning." Each one a story, each one a wound. The sound was overwhelming. Drums, chants, sirens, and the thud of thousands of feet moving as one. Officers locked arms in front of the black door, forming a final line. Inside, aides reportedly sealed the windows and drew curtains. The Prime Minister was somewhere behind those walls, watching on monitors as the people outside demanded answers. Foreign media cut in live. CNN's lower third read, "London descends into protest chaos." France 24, public rage erupts over energy costs. Al Jazeera called it a social breaking point. On Sky News, the host asked the question now circling every newsroom. Has Britain's patience finally snapped? Helicopter footage showed the full scale, a mass of people stretching from Trafalgar Square to the gates of Parliament. Emergency lights flashed blue and red across the smoke. From above, it looked less like a protest and more like a nation reclaiming the street. Inside number 10, the sound wasn't of chanting or sirens. It was silence. The kind that follows shock. Keir Starmer stood in front of a wall of screens, watching live feeds of the chaos outside. The Prime Minister's hands were still, his face unreadable, but everyone in the room could feel it. Disbelief had replaced control. Each monitor showed the same image, thousands chanting his name, not in praise but in fury. Advisors huddled around the table. One urged an emergency address, another warned against showing panic. If you go out there, it'll look like surrender. If you don't, it looks like fear. The argument circled with no end. Someone proposed declaring a limited state of emergency to impose curfews in Westminster. The Attorney General cut in. You do that, you legitimise the idea that you've lost the street. The room fractured. Cabinet ministers joined via secure line, jittery faces framed by laptop screens. Some demanded apology, some demanded firmness. No one offered leadership. The Home Secretary shouted that the police had lost control. The Chancellor argued that calming markets mattered more than calming crowds. "We need words," one aide said. "We need authority," another shot back. On the Prime Minister's desk, a phone kept buzzing. Incoming texts unread. One from a senior advisor leaked within the hour. "He's not listening. He thinks it will pass." The line spread through the press like blood in water. Down the hall, civil servants began drafting contingency statements. In the event of curfew, in the event of resignation, in the event of cabinet defection. No one asked which version would be used first. The government wasn't leading anymore. It was managing collapse. Outside, the roar grew louder. Every live microphone picked up the sound of a country shouting back. Inside, the only sound was the clock ticking over midnight. By morning, Britain's crisis wasn't local. It was global. The footage dominated every network on Earth. BBC ran it non-stop. CNN called it the night the British public broke through the gates. Sky News replayed slow-motion clips of protesters facing police. Al Jazeera broadcasted an overhead shot titled "Downing Street Under Siege." Hashtags stormed across the internet. "Storm Downing Street" hit #1 in 23 countries. "Starmer loses control" followed within the hour. TikTok loops of the barrier collapse reached 50 million views overnight. Commentators on 3 continents drew the same comparisons. France's yellow vests, Canada's truck convoy, America's January 6th. The narrative had formed. Britain's government was cracking under its own people. Markets reacted instantly. The pound slipped another 0.8%. Bond yields spiked. Bloomberg used the phrase, "governance instability." The Financial Times printed its starkest headline in years, "Confidence collapse at the heart of government." While Starmer stayed silent, others filled the vacuum. Nigel Farage appeared on GB News within hours. "This isn't about energy bills, it's about trust. The British don't believe their leaders anymore." The clip went viral. Opposition figures lined up on morning programmes calling for accountability. Conservative MPs demanded a full inquiry into police handling and ministerial judgment. The Reform UK leader called it the collapse of moral authority. Every voice sounded louder than Downing Street's because Downing Street had none. Social media turned the protest into mythology. Drone shots became posters. Memes framed the crowd as the new parliament. Even overseas, anchors used the same phrase, a democratic implosion. Inside the UK, the effect was measurable. Overnight polling showed a record low in confidence. Only 24% of voters believed the government could restore order. Labour's own supporters fractured. The word resignation trended before dawn. By sunrise, thousands were still outside Downing Street, camped under blankets, holding candles in paper cups. Police issued curfew warnings. Nobody moved. Protesters set up small tents along Whitehall and placed handwritten signs on the pavement. "Britain betrayed." The symbolism was deliberate, peaceful, permanent, impossible to ignore. Inside government, fear hardened into resignation. Several ministers reportedly discussed stepping down if Starmer refused to act. Aides whispered about leadership challenges. Political editors hinted that letters of no confidence were being drafted before breakfast. The Prime Minister remained invisible. No statement, no camera, only leaks, all damaging. "He's withdrawn," one insider told reporters. "He's convinced the fury will burn itself out." But outside, the fires of protest literally burned through the night. As daylight spread over London, aerial shots showed the contrast. Inside the gates, darkness and silence. Outside, colour and motion. A crowd that refused to vanish. The chants were slower now, lower, almost ritual. "Listen, listen, listen." The BBC cut to a live correspondent. "This has entered its 3rd day. Police appear unwilling to clear the crowd. The Prime Minister has yet to appear." The anchor asked, "Is this sustainable?" The reporter hesitated. Not for long. By mid-morning, foreign capitals responded. Washington released a cautious statement urging respect for democratic dialogue. Berlin offered solidarity with the British people. Paris remained silent, a diplomatic way of saying watching closely. In Ottawa, one commentator said what others avoided. "We're witnessing a legitimacy crisis in real time." Meanwhile, traders in New York joked grimly that Britain had become the new Italy. The pound continued its slide. Gold prices ticked upward. Every economic signal said the same thing: uncertainty. At noon, cameras caught protesters lighting hundreds of small candles outside the gates. The message taped above them read, "Britain betrayed." Parents brought children to witness it, calling it history. Some left folded notes at the fence. "We just wanted to be heard." Within Downing Street, crisis meetings blended into silence. Ministers sat motionless, watching screens they no longer controlled. Advisors warned that every hour of inaction deepened the fracture. One report circulated with the title Restoring Order Scenario, outlining 3 options: address, curfew, or resignation. None guaranteed stability. Across the country, solidarity rallies ignited: Manchester, Leeds, Cardiff, Belfast. Each carried the same banner: "We are cold, we are done." Helicopter feeds made the nation look like one continuous protest. As the evening fell again, the standoff hardened into something historical. Protesters built makeshift shelters. Police drew new boundaries but didn't enforce them. Media crews stayed live around the clock. The final image that night summed up the crisis: the black door of number 10 behind steel gates, and in front of it, a wall of candles flickering through fog. The question hung over every broadcast, printed under every headline, whispered through every newsroom. Has Britain just witnessed the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer's government?